My name is Joshua Edmonds. This video is for my interpersonal communication project for Liberty University Human Services 508. Interpersonal communication is an important and necessary skill in life. Life is about relationships, and relationships require communication. Communication is something that doesn't happen naturally. It's something that takes effort, work, and practice. It is also something that can be improved upon. You are currently on the introduction slide. If you would advance to a slide titled My Shortfall. My shortfall is in regards with listening. Before I took this course, I thought myself to be a good listener, but after reading the books and the articles and doing the discussion boards and papers, I have found that I have a lot I can improve on in listening. My listening is not nearly as good as I thought it was. If you advance the slide titled Overarching Goal. My goal through this project is to learn to be a better communicator, to improve the quality of my personal relationships, and on a broader sense, to better communicate the gospel to a lost world. I feel that that is an important mission in life, and communication is a big part of that. You can advance to slide titled Background. Growing up, I was one of 4 brothers, and a lot of my communication habits are based upon the way that I would interact with my brothers. We lived a very fast-paced, busy life, and we would tend to finish each other's sentences because we would understand what the other person was going to say, because all of our experiences were the same, so that we would all think of the same thing when something happened. That has made me you had to think fast to keep up, so that in my communication style, I quickly jump to conclusions. I don't wait for a person to finish their sentence. If I know what they're going to say, I just jump in and say it for them. And that is not a good trait to have in listening. If you advance this slide titled Behavioral Blend. My temperament is sort of a combination of 2, sanguine and choleric. Sanguine temperament is active, optimistic, slightly disorganized, but people-oriented. Choleric temperament is active, quick, practical, independent, and task-oriented. In some ways, they blend together, and there's different aspects of it that are stronger with me, and some that are less apparent. If you advance the slide titled Positives. The positives that I can take away from my temperament is I tend to put a positive spin on conversations and problems. That comes more from the sanguine, optimistic part of that temperament. I'm slow to get upset. I think that's because being active and practical, I try to solve problems. So you don't have to get upset if you can see the solution to the problem. Another thing is that I can give practical advice. If someone comes in with a problem, because I can think optimistically and practically, I can give them sort of a solution to their problem. If you advance to negatives now, I tend to rush into things. That comes from that quick thinking, active, just trying to get things done. The disorganization in thought and in lifestyle doesn't help communication, because you'll forget and you won't be paying attention, things like that. I also get distracted while listening easily. It's termed fast thinking by Stewart in his book Bridges Not Walls. Fast thinking refers to the idea that when someone is speaking, they speak between 115 words per minute and 130 words per minute, while someone who is thinking can think in excess of 500 words per minute. So the person listening is able to comprehend at a speed much faster than the person is able to communicate. That leaves the person listening with a lot of extra time, and with that time is sort of where sometimes problems can occur, because when someone's talking to me, I'll sort of reach their conclusion as they're spelling it out, but at a much faster pace than they're spelling it out, and then my mind starts to wander, and then I realize that I'm not paying attention at all. Another downfall is giving too much practical advice. I like to solve people's problems, and sometimes people don't want their problems solved. They just need someone to listen. If you'd advance to slide titled Potential Barriers. One potential barrier is relying too much on scripts. Scripts is something that Stewart also talks about in his book. Scripts are sort of an autopilot mode for processing information. Scripts are what you revert to in commonplace, everyday scenarios, things that you've done over and over and over again. And it's sort of instead of actually paying attention to what's happening, you do things out of habit. Um, you can some things you can develop into scripts. Other things, something maybe new at first, and you concentrate on doing the task, but over time you develop sort of a habit, and you don't have to think about doing it anymore. The same is true with conversations that you have frequently. You develop an autopilot mode in which you sort of zone out what's actually happening. Another problem and barrier that can occur is something called overload. There's so much information available today, either through your phone, your computer, books, TV, media, all these different sources of information. And if you were to remember everything you hear and listen to and see, you would have so much information to process that you'd be completely overwhelmed. So what you learn to do is you learn to tune different parts out. You sort of process it and be like, that's not needed, and you just pass it on. Doing that, though, automatically, sometimes you'll be passing on pieces of information that you actually do need to remember, but you're automatically just filtering them out. That leads to when someone says, I told you that, but you just can't remember, it's because you just filtered it right out. If you advance a slide titled Hurdling the Barriers, some solutions to some of these barriers would be one, mindful listening. Mindful listening is it's discussed in Stewart's book, and it talks about it's very concentrated, intense way of listening. It's almost like giving someone your full attention. You can tell when someone is watching TV and listening. They're not really listening. But mindful listening is a very purposeful. You concentrate on all aspects of the conversation. Something included in inhaling. Inhaling is taking in information, whereas exhaling would be passing on information. Some of the things involved in inhaling would be to listen to the actual words, look for body language, look for implied meanings. They're different things that just create a more complete view of a listener. And focusing on all those things will help you be a more mindful listener. If you'd advance to slide titled Pollutants, one of the things that can cloud my listening is when I become frustrated. Sometimes I become frustrated when people just they don't get to their idea fast enough, and that stems all the way back from my background with my brothers, where we would just jump straight to the conclusion once we sort of figured out what the other person was saying. And sometimes I'll be listening to somebody, and I will jump to the conclusion that I think they're heading towards, but then I have to wait another minute or two until they actually get there, and I'll become frustrated as I'm waiting because it's like, I know what you want to say. If you jump to slide titled Action, some steps that I can take. Peterson, in his book, introduced something called the listener and talker cards. The listener card is something that when I read, I was like, wow, I can apply that. The listener card identifies a couple things. One, that the listener does not own the problem. The listener does not have responsibility for the problem. That sort of takes the burden off of solving the problem. The listener is there to help clarify the problem. The listener is not there to advise the person or agree or disagree or defend. It's merely to be there to understand. If you'd advance to slide titled Action Continued, another helpful thing when listening is to rephrase and repeat. As you listen to the person talking, once you've sort of grasped the meaning and the person has taken a breath, you repeat back in your own words what the person was trying to say to you, so that you can make sure that you're both hearing the same thing. Another way to be an active listener is to acknowledge and respond. When someone is talking to you, you can sort of put in different cues to acknowledge that, okay, I understand that, and just sort of interact with the talker, not in a way that you solve the problems or interrupt, but just enough to acknowledge that you're interested. If you'd advance the slide titled Conclusion, there are steps to improve listening. The steps that I identified in this video and PowerPoint are steps that I can take. Listening is an essential part of communication, and without it, communication fails. Thank you very much.